There are moments in life when you realize that being kind doesn't mean being invisible. When you understand that sometimes love requires standing your ground instead of stepping aside. I never thought I'd be the kind of grandmother who would go to extreme lengths just to be part of my grandson's birthday. But when you've spent decades putting everyone else first, there comes a point where you have to ask yourself, if I don't fight for my place in this family, who will? They say money can't buy happiness. But as it turns out, it can buy an entire children's entertainment center. And sometimes, that's exactly what a grandmother needs to remind her family that she refuses to be erased from their story. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Margaret Collins, though everyone calls me Maggie. For most of my life, I was just an ordinary woman living in the suburbs of Boston. A high school English teacher who loved poetry, afternoon tea, and the occasional mystery novel. Nothing about me suggested I would one day make headlines in our local paper for what my neighbors called the grandma power move of the century. At 64, I was settling into the rhythm of retirement. My husband Richard had passed away, 5 years earlier after 42 years of marriage. We'd raised 2 children, my daughter Emily, who lives in Seattle with her wife, and my son James, who settled just 20 minutes from me with his wife Allison and their son Ethan. My modest colonial house with its creaking wooden floors and overgrown garden had become both my comfort and my prison. The silence that once felt oppressive after Richard's passing had gradually become peaceful. I'd joined a book club, volunteered at the library twice a week, and mastered the art of cooking. Elaborate meals for one? Life wasn't exciting, but it was steady. Until that Tuesday in March when everything changed. I was pruning my hydrangeas when the certified letter arrived. The return address showed a law firm I didn't recognize. For a moment, I worried it might be bad news. At my age, unexpected legal documents rarely bring joy. But as I read through the formal language, my hands began to tremble. 23 years ago, Richard and I had invested $10,000 in his cousin's medical technology startup. We'd forgotten about it entirely. The company had struggled for years, then pivoted to developing specialized surgical equipment. Now they were being acquired by a healthcare giant, and as Richard's surviving spouse, I was entitled to a payout of $2. $7 million. I sank onto the garden bench, letter clutched against my chest. My first thought wasn't about travel or luxury. It was simpler than that. I wouldn't have to worry about being a burden to my children as I aged. I could afford the best care when the time came. The weight of that particular fear, one I'd carried silently since Richard's death, lifted. Instantly. My second thought was about my grandson. Ethan had just turned 8 the previous month, a bright, curious boy with his grandfather's gentle eyes and crooked smile. Despite living only 20 minutes away, I saw him perhaps once every few months, usually at holidays or the occasional Sunday dinner when James could convince Allison it was important. From the moment Ethan was born, my relationship with Allison had been strained. She was a corporate lawyer, brilliant and ambitious, with very specific ideas about how her family should function. I had tried everything, bringing meals during her maternity leave. She said they were too high in sodium. Offering to babysit. She preferred her mother or professional sitters. Suggesting family traditions. She had her own plans. Every attempt to be part of their lives was politely but firmly redirected. James, always the peacekeeper, would smile apologetically and tell me, "She's just particular about things, Mom. It's not personal." But it felt personal, especially when I'd hear about Ethan's activities after they had already happened. Swim lessons I could have watched, school plays I could have attended, birthdays where my presence wasn't requested. I folded the letter carefully and went inside to make a cup of tea. As the kettle whistled, I made a decision. This unexpected windfall was a second chance, not just for financial security, but for building the family connections I'd been missing. The next morning, I called James at his office. "Mom, is everything okay?" His voice had that worried tone adult children get when their parents call unexpectedly, as though every call might bring news of a fall or a diagnosis. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually. I've received some unexpected news and I'd like to discuss it with you and Allison. Perhaps over dinner this weekend?" "This weekend?" He hesitated. "Let me check with Allison. Her schedule gets pretty packed with Ethan's activities." "It's important, James." I rarely insisted on anything, which is perhaps why he paused. "Okay, how about Saturday? We could come by around 6. I suggested a restaurant instead. Neutral territory seemed wiser, and he agreed. For the next few days, I met with a financial advisor, researched educational trusts, and thought carefully about what this money could mean not just for me, but for our family's future. Saturday evening arrived, and I got to the restaurant early. I'd chosen Salvatore's, an upscale Italian place that Allison had once mentioned liking. I wore my best dress, a navy blue wrap style that Richard had always complimented, and arranged 3 folders neatly on the table beside me. James and Allison arrived 15 minutes late. She was in a tailored pantsuit despite it being the weekend, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. James looked tired, the shadows under his eyes more pronounced than I remembered. "Sorry we're late, Mom." James kissed my cheek. "Ethan had a meltdown about us going out without him. I told him we could take him for ice cream tomorrow to make up for it," Allison added, settling into her chair without offering a hug or even a smile. "So what's this important news?" James said it couldn't wait. I took a deep breath. I've received an unexpected windfall. Richard's investment in his cousin's company has paid off, rather significantly. I explained the situation, watching. Their expressions changed from polite interest to surprise. "That's wonderful, Mom," James said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "You deserve it." "Thank you," I smiled. "But I didn't ask you here just to share the news. I wanted to discuss how this might benefit our family, especially Ethan." Allison's posture straightened. "What do you mean?" I opened one of the folders, revealing the educational trust documents my financial advisor had prepared. "I'd like to establish a trust for Ethan's education, college, graduate school if he's interested, whatever path he chooses. The initial funding would be $500,000. James's eyes widened. "Mom, that's incredibly generous." "There's more," I continued, opening the second folder. "I'm considering buying a vacation home on Cape Cod, something with enough room for all of us to enjoy summers together. Ethan could learn to sail, maybe fish like Richard used to love doing." For the first time, I saw Allison's expression soften slightly. "Cape Cod? We've talked about wanting a place there someday." "I know," I nodded. "James mentioned it once. I thought it could be somewhere we could build family memories, the way Richard and I did with you and Emily at your grandparents' lake house." The dinner continued, the conversation flowing more easily than it had in years. James reminisced about childhood summers, and even Allison shared stories about her own grandparents. For the first time since Ethan was born, I felt a genuine connection forming between us. As dessert arrived, I opened the third folder. "There's one more thing. Ethan's birthday is coming up next month. I understand you're planning something at Wildwood Adventure Park?" Allison's expression immediately closed off again. "How did you know about that? We haven't sent invitations yet." "James mentioned it when we spoke last week," I said smoothly, though in truth, I'd overheard them discussing it when they thought I wasn't listening during our last family dinner. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'd like to contribute to making it special, perhaps sponsoring one of their premium experiences, the zipline adventure or the rock climbing package. Allison's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not necessary." We've already planned everything. I'm sure you have, I said, keeping my voice gentle. I just thought, we appreciate the offer, Mom, James interrupted, clearly sensing tension. But Allison's right. We've got it handled. The educational trust and the Cape House ideas are amazing, though. Really? I nodded, closing the folder. Of course. Just let me know if you change your mind. By the time we said goodbye in the parking lot, the evening felt like a qualified success. James hugged me warmly, and Allison had actually initiated a brief, stiff embrace. Progress, I thought. We'll call you about the birthday party details, James promised as they got into their car. Maybe you could help with the goodie bags or something. Goodie bags. Not attendance, not a meaningful role, but goodie bags. Still, it was something. I drove home feeling cautiously optimistic. That optimism lasted exactly 9 days. I was at my book club meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from James. Mom, can I call you later about Ethan's party? Of course, I replied. I'm free all afternoon. But the call didn't come that afternoon or that evening. The next morning, I was watering my plants when the phone finally rang. Hi, Mom. James sounded uncomfortable. About Ethan's birthday party. Yes? I cradled the phone between my ear and shoulder, setting down my watering can. I've been thinking about those goodie bags. What theme are you doing? That's actually what I needed to discuss, he said. The thing is, we're having to limit attendance. This year. Wildwood has strict capacity rules for their packages. Oh? My heart sank. I knew where this was headed. How many guests are you allowed? It's not just about the total number, he hedged. Allison's parents are flying in from Chicago. Her sister and the cousins are coming too. It's going to be mostly family and a few of Ethan's closest friends. I waited for him to continue, to say, of course you're included in family, but the silence stretched between us. And I'm not considered family? I finally asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurt blooming in my chest. Mom, it's not like that, James sighed. It's just complex. Allison feels the kids get overwhelmed with too many adults around. Maybe we could do something special, just the three of us, the weekend after. The three of us meaning you, me, and Ethan? I clarified. Another pause. Well, probably the four of us. Allison wouldn't want Ethan going without her. I closed my eyes. The translated message was clear. I wasn't trusted even for a few hours alone with my own grandson and son. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Not really. When is the party exactly? Next Saturday at 2 p.m., he replied, sounding relieved that I wasn't arguing. But like I said, we'll plan something else soon. Of course, I said mechanically. Please tell Ethan. I love him. After we hung up, I sat in my sunroom surrounded by plants Richard and I had nurtured together, some older than our marriage. The peace lily he'd given me on our first anniversary had been propagated so many times, it now filled 3 large pots. The jade plant from our 20th anniversary had grown into a small tree. What had I done to make Allison so determined to exclude me? What unforgivable offense had I committed? I'd always been careful with her, mindful of boundaries, respectful of her position as Ethan's mother. Yet somehow I remained on the outside, my face pressed against the glass of their lives. The following day, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Patricia Lawrence, whose grandson attended the same school as Ethan. Maggie, how lovely to see you, she beamed, adjusting her glasses. Are you all ready for the big birthday extravaganza at Wildwood? Connor hasn't stopped talking about it. Apparently, they're doing some special dinosaur-themed activities just for the party. I froze, my hand hovering over a display of apples. Dinosaur-themed? Yes, They're bringing in those marvelous animatronic dinosaurs from the museum's traveling exhibit. Quite the expense, I imagine, but what a wonderful treat for the children. It certainly sounds special, I managed, my mind racing. This wasn't a small, intimate family gathering with limited capacity. This was an elaborate event with museum exhibits. Connor says they've invited his entire class, plus the soccer team, Patricia continued, oblivious to my distress. I'm helping. Chaperone since they need extra adults for such a large group. Will you be doing the same? I'm not certain yet, I lied. My role is still being determined. Patricia nodded sympathetically. It's always complicated with in-laws, isn't it? My daughter-in-law insisted on handling everything for Connor's last birthday. Wouldn't let me contribute a thing besides showing up. Some people just need to control every detail. I nodded, making an excuse about forgotten items in another aisle. As I pushed my cart away, a strange calm settled over me. The hurt was still there, but now accompanied by clarity. This wasn't about capacity limitations or overwhelming Ethan. This was about deliberately excluding me while including dozens of others. That afternoon, instead of driving home, I found myself turning into the parking lot of Wildwood Adventure Park. I'd never been there before, though I'd heard Ethan mention it enthusiastically. It was an impressive facility, sprawling indoor, and outdoor play areas nestled against a wooded conservation area at the edge of town. At the reception desk, a young woman with a name tag reading Meredith greeted me with a professional smile. Welcome to Wildwood. How can I help you today? I'm interested in birthday party packages, I said. Specifically, I'm curious about an event scheduled for next Saturday. The Collins party? Meredith typed something into her computer. Yes, we have that reservation. Are you with the party planning team? I'm the grandmother, I said simply. Oh, Mrs. Collins mentioned you might stop by to discuss the dinosaur exhibit arrangements. She turned the monitor slightly. They've reserved our premium adventure package with the museum partnership add-on. It includes exclusive use of our main pavilion and adventure course from 1:30 to 4:30, with staffed activities and the dinosaur interactive exhibit. And how many guests does that package accommodate? I asked casually. The premium package is for up to 60 guests, though Mrs. Collins has currently confirmed 43. 43 guests, but no room for one grandmother. It looks like quite an elaborate event, I commented, keeping my voice light. I imagine something like that would be quite expensive. Meredith nodded. The premium package with the dinosaur exhibit is our most expensive offering. It starts at $3,800, plus catering and add-ons. I see. I glanced around the reception area, noting the wall of photographs showing happy children on rock-climbing walls and zip lines. The facility is beautiful. Has it been here long? About 15 years, Meredith said. Though I should mention we're entering a transition period. The original owner is retiring and looking to sell the business. In fact, we're not booking events beyond 3 months from now until the new ownership is established. Something shifted inside me. A wild, impossible idea began to form. The owner is selling? The entire business? Yes, Mr. Davidson has run it since opening, but he's moving to Florida. There's been some interest from corporate entertainment groups, but nothing finalized yet. Would it be possible for me to speak with Mr. Davidson about the business? Meredith looked surprised. He's actually here today. I could check if he's available, Ms. Collins, Margaret Collins. While she made a call, I wandered around the reception area, looking at the framed mission statement that talked about creating magical memories for families and strengthening bonds through shared adventures. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 minutes later, I was seated in a modest office with Robert Davidson, a tanned man in his late 60s with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines around his eyes. So you're interested in Wildwood? He asked after introductions. Do you have experience in the entertainment industry? None whatsoever, I admitted. I'm a retired English teacher, but I am interested in family experiences and creating memories. I paused. And I recently came into a significant inheritance that I'm looking to invest meaningfully. Robert's eyebrows rose slightly. Well, I won't pretend running this place isn't challenging. It's rewarding, but it requires energy and business savvy. I imagine it does, I agreed. Would you mind sharing some details about the business? Revenue, expenses, growth potential? For the next hour, Robert walked me through the Wildwood business model. The facility did well, but faced increasing competition from newer entertainment centers with flashier technology. The property itself was valuable, 5 acres including the conservation area access, but needed modernization. Honestly, Robert said, leaning back in his chair, the right buyer could transform this place. We've built a solid reputation for quality experiences, but it needs fresh energy and capital investment. I found myself nodding along, genuinely interested in the possibilities. What asking price are you considering? He named a figure that, while substantial, was well within my newfound means. But I'm flexible for the right buyer who would preserve what makes Wildwood special. I've had corporate offers that would likely turn it into something entirely different. As our meeting concluded, I found myself asking, how quickly could a sale potentially happen, hypothetically speaking? Robert shrugged. With the right offer and a motivated buyer willing to handle the business as is initially, as little as a week to sign preliminary agreements, though the full legal transition would take longer. I shook his hand as I left, my mind racing with possibilities. What had started as a fact-finding mission had evolved into something else entirely. Something that perhaps crossed the line from assertiveness into madness. That evening, I sat in my garden watching the sunset, Richard's favorite time of day. We'd often share a glass of wine here, talking through important decisions together. What would you do, Richard? I asked the empty chair beside me. Am I being petty even considering this? Or is it time to stop being invisible? The garden offered no answers, but as darkness fell, I felt a strange sense of resolve solidifying within me. For 8 years, I had tried the patient approach. I had respected boundaries that kept moving, kept shrinking the space I was allowed to occupy in my grandson's life. Perhaps it was time for a different approach. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, then my attorney. By afternoon, I had scheduled another meeting with Robert Davidson. 3 days later, I was signing preliminary paperwork to purchase Wildwood Adventure Park, with an expedited closing process. May I ask what prompted this decision? Robert asked as we finalized the initial agreement. Most people don't buy an adventure park on a whim. I smiled. Let's just say I'm tired of watching life from the sidelines. I'm ready for an adventure of my own. 1 week before Ethan's birthday, the preliminary ownership transfer was complete. I would be the official owner of Wildwood Adventure Park as of Friday, 1 day before my grandson's party. I hadn't told James or Allison. I hadn't told anyone except my attorney and financial advisor, both of whom had questioned my sanity, but ultimately supported my decision after I explained my broader vision for the business. Because the truth was, beyond the immediate situation with Ethan's birthday, I had begun to see genuine potential in Wildwood. The business needed innovation, not dissolution. It needed someone who valued family experiences and educational opportunities. With my background in education and my newfound resources, perhaps this wasn't such a crazy investment after all. The Friday before the party, I met with the Wildwood staff as their new owner. I introduced myself, assured them their jobs were secure, and explained that for now, all operations would continue exactly as planned. Including the Collins birthday party tomorrow, I specified to the events team. Everything proceeds exactly as arranged, with one small addition. I'll be attending as well. The head of events, a competent woman named Diana, looked confused. But Mrs. Collins specifically mentioned you wouldn't be attending. She was very clear about the guest list." "I understand," I said calmly. "But as the owner, I'll be conducting a quality assessment of our premium package experience. I'll be discreet." Diana looked uncertain but nodded. "Of course, Ms. Collins." That night, I barely slept. Part of me wondered if I had gone completely mad. Had grief and loneliness driven me to this extreme? Was I destroying my relationship with my son forever? But another part, a part that had been silenced for too long, whispered that sometimes the only way to be heard is to change the rules of engagement. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in khaki pants and a turquoise blouse. Colorful enough for a children's party, but professional enough for a business owner. I had wrapped Ethan's gift the night before, a first edition of Where the Wild Things Are, his favorite book when he was younger, that I'd tracked down through a rare book dealer. At 1:15 p.m., I parked in the staff section of the Wildwood lot. Families were already arriving, excited children dragging parents toward the entrance where a "Happy Birthday, Ethan" banner fluttered in the breeze. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, giving myself one last chance to reconsider. But when I saw James and Allison arrive with Ethan, watched how his face lit up with excitement, something solidified inside me. I had a right to share in my grandson's joy. I had a right to be part of his memories. I deserved to be visible in my own family's story. I picked up the carefully wrapped gift, straightened my shoulders, and stepped out of the car. As I walked toward the entrance of Wildwood Adventure Park, my Wildwood Adventure Park, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the exhilarating power of refusing to be erased. The staff greeted me with nods and subtle smiles. We had agreed I would enter discreetly, not making a scene or announcing my ownership. Meredith at the reception desk gave me a small thumbs up as I passed. I had instructed everyone to treat this as a routine ownership observation, nothing more. Inside, the main pavilion had been transformed into a prehistoric wonderland. Animatronic dinosaurs stood among lush greenery, moving their heads and emitting realistic growls. Tables decorated with dinosaur-themed centerpieces surrounded a massive three-tiered cake, shaped like a volcano with a T-Rex climbing its side. Children were already running between activity stations where staff members helped them excavate fossils from sandboxes and create dinosaur masks. I positioned myself near the entrance, partially obscured by a large potted palm, watching as more guests arrived. Many were families I recognized from school events, parents greeting each other warmly, children racing off to join the activities. Allison's parents arrived, her father carrying an enormous wrapped gift, her mother immediately taking charge of organizing the present table. Then came Allison's sister with her 3 children, all dressed in coordinating dinosaur t-shirts. The party was in full swing, and no one had noticed me yet. I watched Ethan, surrounded by friends, his face alight with joy as he examined one of the animatronic dinosaurs. James stood nearby, chatting with other fathers, occasionally glancing at his phone. Allison moved between guest clusters, the perfect hostess, ensuring everyone had what they needed. I waited, observing the family dynamics, trying to decide on my approach. I didn't want to create a scene or ruin Ethan's day, but I also refused to remain invisible. My decision was made for me when Ethan himself spotted me. His eyes widened in surprise, then his face broke into a delighted grin as he ran toward me. "Grandma, you came!" He crashed into me with an enthusiastic hug. "Dad said you couldn't make it." I hugged him back, savoring the moment. "I wouldn't miss your birthday, sweetheart. I have something special for you." Ethan took the wrapped gift, his eyes sparkling. "Can I open it now?" "Of course you can," I smiled. As he tore away the paper, James appeared at my side, his expression a mix of confusion and alarm. "Mom? What are you doing here? We talked about this." His voice was low, tense. "I'm celebrating my grandson's birthday," I replied calmly. "As his grandmother, that seems reasonable." But we agreed. No, James. You informed me. There was no agreement. Before he could respond, Ethan gasped as he revealed the book. Whoa, is this real? The actual first one ever? It's a first edition, I explained, crouching down to his level. One of the original copies from when the book was first published. See the special marks on the copyright page? That's how you know. Ethan handled the book reverently, his fingers tracing the illustrations. This is the coolest thing ever. Thank you, Grandma. You're welcome, sweetheart. I glanced up to see Allison approaching, her expression stormy. Ethan, why don't you go show your friends the fossil dig? The paleontologist is about to demonstrate how they clean real fossils, she suggested, her voice tight. But I want to show everyone my book. Later, honey. The demonstration is starting now. Reluctantly, Ethan handed me the book for safekeeping and ran off to join his friends. The moment he was out of earshot, Allison turned to me, arms crossed. This is completely inappropriate, Margaret. We specifically told you this was a limited gathering. Yes, limited to 43 guests, from what I understand. Everyone except me. James stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mom, please, this isn't the time or place for this discussion. I agree, I said. This is time for celebrating Ethan, which is exactly why I'm here. Allison's eyes narrowed. How did you even get in? I specifically told the staff you weren't on the guest list. This was the moment. I took a deep breath. The staff report to me now, Allison. I'm their employer. There was a beat of confusion before understanding dawned on James's face. What are you talking about? I purchased Wildwood Adventure Park last week. The papers were finalized yesterday. I'm the new owner. The silence that followed was profound, their faces frozen in shock. Allison recovered first, her voice incredulous. You bought an entire business just to crash your grandson's birthday party? That's deranged. I bought a business because it was a sound investment opportunity, I corrected. The timing was coincidental but convenient. James was shaking his head slowly. Mom, this is extreme, even for you. Is it? More extreme than being told. There's no room for me at a 60-person party? More extreme than being systematically excluded from my grandson's life for 8 years? Before either could respond, Ethan came running back, followed by several of his friends. Grandma? The dinosaur expert wants to know if you're going to watch the show. He says it's starting in 5 minutes. I smiled at him. I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. Ethan tugged at my hand. Come on, you can sit with me in the front row. I saved you a seat. I glanced at James and Allison, whose faces were a study in conflicting emotions. Anger, embarrassment, confusion. But in front of Ethan and his friends, they remained silent. Lead the way, I told Ethan, allowing him to pull me toward the demonstration area. As we walked away, I heard Allison's mother ask, "Who is that woman with Ethan?" And for the first time in years, I heard James respond clearly, without hesitation. That's my mother. The dinosaur show was spectacular. A combination of animatronics, puppetry, and educational content delivered by an engaging paleontologist. Ethan sat beside me, occasionally grabbing my hand to point out particularly exciting moments. I was conscious of Allison watching from the side, her expression unreadable, but I focused entirely on Ethan's joy. After the show, as children dispersed to other activities, Ethan tugged at my sleeve. Grandma, do you want to see me do the rock climbing wall? I can go all the way to the top now. I'd love to see that, I assured him. Cool, I'm going to get my special climbing shoes from Mom. He dashed off, leaving me momentarily alone. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find Allison's mother, Eleanor, studying me with undisguised curiosity. So you're James's mother, she said. I don't believe we've ever been properly introduced at family gatherings. The pointed comment didn't escape me. No, we haven't. though not for lack of desire on my part. Eleanor nodded slowly. Allison says you've been distant since Ethan was born, that you criticize her parenting. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what she says? Interesting. Interpretation of events. And what's your interpretation? I considered my words carefully. I believe Allison prefers to keep her family life compartmentalized. I respect that she's Ethan's mother, but that doesn't negate my role as his grandmother. Eleanor studied me for a long moment. And buying this place? What was that about? Really? It was about refusing to be erased, I said simply. About reminding my family that I exist, that I matter, that I have a right to be part of my grandson's life. She seemed surprised by my candor. That's actually refreshing. Most people would dance around it. I'm too old for dancing. Around truths, Eleanor. The hint of a smile touched her lips. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I think grandmothers are essential. My own mother was my saving grace when I was raising Allison and her sister. Before I could respond, James approached, his expression cautious. Mom, can we talk? Privately? I nodded to Eleanor and followed James to a quiet corner near the refreshment table. What you did, he began, then paused, running a hand through his hair. I don't even know what to say. You could start with why you lied to me about the capacity limits. He had the grace to look ashamed. That wasn't my idea. Allison thought it would be easier than explaining that her parents are uncomfortable around you. Uncomfortable? They've never even met me. They've heard. Things. Things, I repeated flatly. What things could they possibly have heard when I've been kept at arm's length for 8 years? James looked pained. Allison has always felt judged by you. From the beginning, when you suggested different ways to handle Ethan's colic or offered to help with meal preparation. She interpreted it as criticism. I was trying to help James. That's what family does. I know, he sighed. But it created this narrative that you disapproved of her, and over time, that narrative solidified. It was easier to maintain distance than to address it. Easier for whom? I asked quietly. Not for me, not for Ethan. I should have handled it better, he admitted. I'm sorry, Mom. Something in his tone, genuine remorse rather than placation, softened my resolve slightly. I don't want to be at war with my family, James. I just want to be included in it. Buying Wildwood was still extreme, he pointed out. Perhaps, but it got your attention, didn't it? A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. It definitely did. That. Across the room, I could see Allison in deep conversation with her parents, occasionally glancing our way. Her body language was tense, defensive. Allison isn't going to forgive this easily, James warned, following my gaze. I'm not looking for forgiveness, I said. I'm looking for acknowledgement. Recognition that I have a right to a relationship with my grandson. James nodded slowly. I understand, and I'll do better, Mom. I promise. I hope so. I squeezed his arm gently. Now, I believe I was promised a demonstration of rock climbing prowess. For the remainder of the party, I maintained a low profile while still being present. I watched Ethan scale the climbing wall, applauded during the cake cutting, and chatted with other grandparents who were curious about the new owner. Allison kept her distance, her expression frosty whenever our eyes met, but she didn't make any further attempts to remove me. As the party wound down, I found myself helping staff clear away some of the activity materials, my teacher instincts kicking in automatically. Ethan found me there, clutching his precious book along with several new dinosaur toys. Grandma, are you leaving? The party's almost over. Yes, sweetheart. I need to talk with the staff about a few things. He frowned. But you're coming to our house after, right? For pizza and to watch me play my new video games? I hesitated, not wanting to disappoint him, but knowing I hadn't been invited to any after-party gathering. "I'm not sure that's the plan, Ethan. But you have to come. You're the only one who hasn't seen my room since I rearranged it. Plus, I want to show you my fossil collection." Before I could formulate a gentle letdown, James appeared behind Ethan, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Actually, buddy, Grandma is invited. If she'd like to come, that is." The surprise must have shown on my face because James added quietly, "It's time to start doing better." Ethan's face lit up. "Awesome! We can read my new book together later, okay, Grandma?" "I'd like that very much," I managed, emotion threatening to close my throat. As Ethan ran off to gather more of his presents, James gave me a small, meaningful nod before following his son. It wasn't a full reconciliation. There were still many conversations to be had, many wounds to address, but it was an opening. A crack in the wall that had separated me from my family for too long. Diana approached as I watched them go. "Ms. Collins?" Everything went smoothly with the party. The staff handled the situation very professionally. "Thank you, Diana. I appreciate everyone's discretion today." She hesitated, then asked, "If you don't mind my asking, did it work? Your plan?" I considered the question. Had it worked? I had forced my way into a celebration from which I'd been deliberately excluded. I had used my financial resources to override someone else's boundaries. From certain perspectives, what I'd done was inappropriate, perhaps even wrong. But I had also refused to accept invisibility. I had claimed my right to exist in my grandson's life, to be acknowledged rather than erased. And in doing so, I had created an opening for honest conversation that years of patient acceptance had failed to produce. "Yes," I told Diana finally. "I think it did work, though perhaps not in the way I initially imagined." The Sunday after Ethan's birthday, I woke early and made coffee, taking it out to my garden. The morning was bright and clear, birds chattering in the maple tree Richard had planted decades ago. I'd barely slept, replaying yesterday's events in my mind, questioning and second-guessing my actions. Had I gone too far? Had I damaged my relationship with my son beyond repair? What must the other parents think of me? Yet beneath the doubt lay a stubborn certainty. I had done what was necessary. After years of patient acceptance, of respecting boundaries that kept shrinking until I was nearly erased from my grandson's life, I had finally taken a stand. I had refused to be invisible. My phone chimed with a text message. "James, Ethan keeps asking when he'll see you again. Would Wednesday after school work? Just the two of you?" I stared at the screen, surprised and cautiously hopeful. This wasn't the angry recrimination I'd expected, but a tentative olive branch. I texted back, "I'd love that. Should I pick him up from school?" The response came quickly. "I'll drop him at your place around 3:30. He can stay for dinner if that works for you." "Perfect," I replied. "I'll look forward to it." I set the phone down, a small smile forming. Whatever Allison might think of me now, whatever awkwardness existed between James and me, Ethan still wanted me in his life. It was a beginning. The 3 days until Wednesday passed in a blur of activity. I met with the Wildwood staff, reassuring them about their jobs and discussing ideas for improvements. I researched adventure park management and educational program development, surprising myself with my growing enthusiasm for this unexpected business venture. I cleaned my house from top to bottom and planned a menu of Ethan's favorite foods. When Wednesday arrived, I found myself watching the clock, unusually nervous about spending time with my own grandson. At precisely 3:30, James's car pulled into my driveway. Ethan bounded out, his backpack bouncing while James followed more slowly. "Grandma!" Ethan launched himself at me for a hug. "Dad says I can stay until after dinner." "That's right," I smiled, hugging him back. "I was thinking we could make pizza together. Would you like that?" "Yes. Can we put pepperoni and olives on it? And mushrooms? Absolutely, whatever you'd like. James approached, his expression careful but not hostile. Thanks for having him, Mom. I'll pick him up around 7:30 if that works. Stay for dessert, I offered impulsively. I'm making apple crisp, your favorite as a boy. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'd like that. After he left, Ethan and I spent a wonderful afternoon together. He showed me his latest science project. We played board games and later made pizza together, Ethan carefully arranging toppings in an elaborate pattern. Throughout it all, he chattered about school, friends, and especially his birthday party. I'm really glad you came to my party, Grandma, he said suddenly as we waited for the pizza to bake. Even if Mom and Dad were weird about it. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings about things, but what matters is that we all care about you very much. He nodded sagely. Mom said you bought Wildwood just so you could come to my party. Is that true? I smiled. Partly. I also thought it would be an interesting challenge to run a place like that. I was a teacher for a long time, you know, and Wildwood has lots of opportunities for children to learn while they're having fun. Will you change things there? Make them better? I hope to. Do you have any suggestions? His face lit up. Could you add more dinosaur stuff? Maybe real fossils that kids could touch? And a special place for science experiments? Those are excellent ideas, I told him. Maybe you could be my special consultant and help me plan improvements. He beamed with pride. When James arrived for dessert, Ethan eagerly shared our plans for Wildwood, his excitement filling the kitchen with energy. James listened attentively, asking questions and offering suggestions of his own. As we ate apple crisp, warm with melting ice cream, the tension between us gradually eased. This wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a start. When they were leaving, James lingered at the door after Ethan had gone to the car. Mom, about what happened at the party, he began. I held up a hand. We don't need to discuss it now, James. Let's just enjoy this evening for what it was. He nodded, looking relieved. Ethan had a great time. He's always loved being with you. After a moment, he added, I was thinking, maybe we could start having Sunday dinners together. Once or twice a month to begin with. I'd like that very much, I said, working to keep my voice steady despite the emotion welling inside me. Good. I'll talk to Allison about scheduling. He hesitated, then added, it might take her some time to adjust to everything. I understand. I'm willing to be patient. After they left, I sat in my quiet house, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. The evening had gone better than I'd dared hope. For the first time in years, I felt like I might have a real place in my grandson's life, not just the carefully choreographed visits I'd been allowed before. The next morning, I drove to Wildwood with a renewed sense of purpose. If I now owned an adventure park, still a somewhat surreal thought, I was determined to make it the best it could be. I spent the day meeting with staff, touring the facility, and making lists of potential improvements. Diana, the events manager who had been so professional during Ethan's party, proved to be a valuable resource. The previous owner was looking toward retirement, she explained as we examined the main pavilion. He hasn't invested in major updates for several years. What would you change first if it were up to you? I asked her. She thought for a moment. The educational components could be stronger. Children love the physical activities, the climbing walls, the zip lines, but we could do so much more with interactive learning stations, something that combines fun with science or history. I nodded, impressed with her insight. That's exactly what I was thinking. My background is in education, and I'd like to bring that perspective to Wildwood. Over the next few weeks, a new pattern emerged in my life. Weekdays were devoted to Wildwood, where I was gradually implementing changes: fresh paint, new educational signage, updated safety procedures. I met with local teachers to develop curriculum-aligned programs for school field trips. I researched industry best practices and visited other adventure parks for ideas. Wednesdays became my special time with Ethan. James would drop him off after school, and we'd spend the afternoon together, baking, playing games, working on science projects. Sometimes James would join us for dinner, sometimes not, but the visits became a regular fixture in our lives. And then there were the Sunday dinners, twice monthly, as James had proposed. The first one was predictably awkward. Allison was polite but distant, carefully directing conversation toward neutral topics. I brought a small gift for Ethan, but nothing that could be interpreted as overstepping: a book about paleontology that his teacher had recommended. By the third Sunday dinner, a month and a half after the birthday party, the atmosphere had softened slightly. Allison actually asked my opinion about Ethan's reading curriculum, acknowledging my teaching background. James seemed more relaxed, less like he was walking on eggshells between his mother and his wife. Ethan, oblivious to the undercurrents, was simply delighted to have regular time with his grandmother. One Wednesday in late June, Ethan and I were experimenting with different recipes for slime, his current scientific obsession, when he asked me an unexpected question. "Grandma, why didn't you and Mom like each other before?" I paused, carefully measuring cornstarch. "What makes you think we didn't like each other?" He rolled his eyes with the exasperation only an 8-year-old can muster. "Because you never came to our house except for special days. And Mom always got that weird smile when Dad said your name. The one that's not really a smile." I couldn't help but laugh at his perception. "I know that smile. Adults sometimes have complicated feelings about each other, Ethan. It doesn't mean anyone is bad or wrong. But it's different now," he observed, stirring green food coloring into his slime mixture. "You come over more. And yesterday I heard Mom telling Aunt Lisa that you're not what she expected." "What did she mean?" "I considered how much to share. I think your mom and I didn't know each other very well before. Sometimes when you don't know someone, you make assumptions about them that aren't accurate." He nodded seriously. "Like when I thought Jason in my class was mean because he never talked to anyone, but then I found out he's just really shy and he's actually nice." "Exactly like that," I agreed. "People are usually more complicated than they first appear." That conversation stayed with me long after James picked Ethan up that evening. Children often see truths that adults work hard to disguise. Ethan had recognized the tension between Allison and me, but he'd also noticed its recent easing. The phrase, "not what she expected," echoed in my mind. What exactly had Allison expected? And how was I different from that image? The following Sunday dinner brought another small breakthrough. As we gathered in James and Allison's dining room, I noticed something new on their wall. A framed photograph of Ethan and me from his birthday party, both of us smiling as we examined one of the animatronic dinosaurs. I hadn't even realized the moment had been captured. "That's a lovely photograph," I commented, trying to sound casual despite my surprise. "Ethan insisted we frame it," Allison explained, setting a bowl of pasta on the table. "He said it was his favorite picture from the party." The conversation moved on to other topics, but throughout dinner, my eyes kept returning to that photograph. Its presence on their wall felt significant, an acknowledgement of my place in Ethan's life, displayed in their most public family space. After dinner, while James and Ethan were setting up a board game, Allison asked if I'd help her prepare coffee and dessert. In the kitchen, she suddenly said, "I've been meaning to ask you something." "Of course," I replied, curious at her serious tone. "Ethan's school is forming a committee to enhance their science curriculum. They're looking for community members with educational expertise. She hesitated. I thought, given your background in teaching and what you're doing at Wildwood, you might be interested. I was momentarily speechless. This wasn't just polite inclusion. This was active outreach, an acknowledgement of my professional value beyond my role as grandmother. I'd be honored, I managed finally. Thank you for thinking of me. She nodded, focusing intently on slicing the chocolate cake. The first meeting is next Tuesday evening. I'm on the parent liaison committee, so I'll be there as well. It was a small gesture, but its significance wasn't lost on me. Whether consciously or not, Allison was opening a door to a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than wary tolerance. The curriculum committee proved to be exactly the kind of intellectual challenge I'd been missing since retirement. The group included several teachers, a few parents with scientific backgrounds, and a curator. From the local Natural History Museum, we met bi-weekly, developing recommendations for enriching the science program with more hands-on learning, community partnerships, and interdisciplinary connections. Allison and I discovered a surprisingly effective working dynamic during these meetings. Her legal training complemented my educational expertise. She excelled at precise language and policy considerations, while I contributed pedagogical insights and practical classroom experience. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd become professional allies, united by a common goal of enhancing Ethan's education. One evening in early August, after a particularly productive committee meeting, Allison suggested we stop for coffee before heading home. I agreed, surprised but pleased by the invitation. We settled into a quiet corner of a cafe, near the school, both of us a bit awkward in this unfamiliar social territory. The dinosaur exhibit proposal is coming along well, Allison commented after we'd ordered. The Natural History Museum seems genuinely interested in the partnership. Yes, Marcus has some excellent connections there, and the idea of rotating exhibits keeps the content fresh for the students. I stirred my tea, then decided to take a risk. Allison, may I ask you something personal? She looked surprised, but nodded. Ethan mentioned that he heard you telling your sister I wasn't what you expected. I've been wondering what exactly you did expect. She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. That's a fair question. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. I expected someone more. Intrusive, I suppose. More critical. Someone who would constantly second-guess my parenting decisions and try to take over. And that's not me, I asked gently. Not in the way I feared. She met my eyes directly. Don't misunderstand. Buying Wildwood was definitely intrusive. But your intentions were different than I thought. You wanted to be included, not to take control. That's all I've ever wanted, I said quietly. To be part of Ethan's life, part of your family's life, to the extent you're comfortable with that. She nodded slowly. I'm beginning to understand that, and I'm trying to be more open to it. May I ask what changed your perspective? Allison considered the question, carefully stirring sugar into her coffee. Seeing you with Ethan, for one thing. The way you engage with him, it's respectful, not condescending. You listen to him, take his ideas seriously. She paused. And what you've done with Wildwood, taking what could have been a purely emotional reaction and turning it into something genuinely valuable for the community. It showed. Depth I hadn't given you credit for. Her candor was disarming. Thank you for sharing that. And for giving me a chance to prove your initial expectations wrong. Well, your approach was rather impossible to ignore, she said with the ghost of a smile. Not many people buy entire businesses to make a point. It wasn't my most subtle moment, I acknowledged, smiling back. We finished our coffee in a more comfortable silence, the weight of years of misunderstanding beginning to lift. As we prepared to leave, Allison surprised me again. James and I are planning a weekend at Cape Cod next month before school starts. Ethan has been asking if you would join us. If you're interested, we'd like to extend the invitation. I tried, not to show how deeply the invitation touched me. I'd be delighted, thank you. The Cape Cod weekend fell on the last weekend of August. Perfect weather for enjoying the beach. Warm days, cool evenings, and crystal clear skies filled with stars. I'd booked a room at the same oceanfront hotel where James and Allison were, staying, wanting to give them family space while still being close by for activities. Ethan was beside himself with excitement, bounding between our rooms with plans for each day. "Grandma, can we go fossil hunting on the beach? And tide pooling? And can you teach me how to identify all the different shells?" "Absolutely," I smiled. "I've brought field guides and collection containers. We can start a proper scientific observation journal." His eyes widened. "Like real scientists do? With drawings and measurements and everything?" "Exactly like real scientists." James grinned, watching our exchange. "Mom was always the one who made learning into an adventure," he told Ethan. "When I was a boy, every family trip turned into a scientific expedition or historical investigation." "Really?" Ethan looked at me with new appreciation. "Your father was particularly enthusiastic about marine biology," I recalled. "We spent one entire summer vacation classifying the different seaweeds that washed up on the shore." "I'd forgotten about that," James said, his expression softening with the memory. "You helped me create a preservation method for keeping samples in that old photo album. You still have that? I thought it would have been discarded years ago." "It's in the attic somewhere. I should dig it out for Ethan." That evening, after a seafood dinner overlooking the harbor, we strolled along the beach as the sun set. Ethan ran ahead, searching for interesting shells and stones, while James, Allison, and I walked together, our conversation flowing more easily than I could remember. "Ethan is so much like you were at that age," I told James. "That same curiosity, that hunger to understand how things work." "I've thought the same thing," he admitted. "Sometimes when he's deep in concentration over a science experiment or a new book, I see myself at 8 years old." "He has your patience," Allison added. "The ability to focus on something for hours when it interests him. Most children his age can't sustain attention that long." "That comes from James's side, definitely," I agreed. "I was always more scattered in my approach, interested in everything, master of nothing." "That's not how I remember it," James objected. "You seem to know everything. No matter what question I asked, you either knew the answer or knew exactly where to find it." "That's a teacher's skill, not necessarily knowing all the answers, but knowing how to find them," I explained, and being curious enough to want to. As darkness fell, we headed back to the hotel. Ethan was drooping with exhaustion, the day's excitement catching up with him. James lifted him onto his shoulders for the walk back, Ethan's sleepy head resting on his father's. "His bedtime has come and gone," Allison observed, but without any real concern. "Special allowances for vacation." "The best childhood memories often happen after bedtime," I said softly. "Those magical moments when the usual rules are suspended." She nodded, watching her husband and son silently for a moment before turning to me. "Margaret, there's something I've been wanting to say to you." "What is it?" "I'm sorry." The words came simply, directly. "I'm sorry for keeping you at arm's length all these years, for not making more effort to include you in Ethan's life." I was momentarily speechless, not having expected this sudden apology. "It wasn't fair to you, and it certainly wasn't fair to Ethan," she continued. "I let my own insecurities about motherhood color how I saw your attempts to be involved." "Thank you for saying that," I said once I'd found my voice again. "I appreciate your honesty. And I should apologize too, for not being more sensitive to how my offers of help might have been perceived, and for the extreme nature of my response to the birthday situation. The hint of a smile touched her lips. It was extreme, but effective. Sometimes subtle approaches fail, I said, returning her smile. Indeed they do. As we continued walking, I felt a shift in our relationship. Not a dramatic transformation, but a gentle easing, like the tension leaving a tightly wound spring. We would never be best friends, Allison and I, but perhaps we could be something better than strangers forced together by family ties. The remainder of the weekend passed in a blur of pleasant activities, beach explorations, a whale-watching expedition, visits to local museums and historical sites. Ethan's enthusiasm was boundless, his natural curiosity enhanced by the new experiences. By Sunday afternoon, as we prepared to return home, he had filled an entire notebook with observations, sketches, and questions for further research. This was the best vacation ever, he declared as we packed the car. Can we do it again next year? With Grandma too? James looked at Allison, who nodded. I think that's an excellent idea, she said. Maybe we could make it an annual tradition. The word annual hung in the air, a promise of continuity, of inclusion beyond this single weekend. I swallowed against the sudden emotion in my throat. I'd like that very much, I managed. Back home, life settled into new rhythms. My Wildwood responsibilities kept me busy during the day, overseeing renovations and program development. The curriculum committee at Ethan's school met regularly, our recommendations gradually taking shape into a comprehensive proposal. And my personal time with Ethan expanded, not just our Wednesday afternoons and bi-monthly Sunday dinners, but occasional weekend outings, school events, and impromptu visits. One Tuesday morning in late September, I was reviewing financial projections with Diana when my phone rang. Seeing Allison's name on the screen surprised me. She rarely called during work hours. Hello? Margaret, I'm sorry to bother you at work. There's a situation and I was hoping you might be able to help. Her voice had an unusual edge of stress. Of course. What's wrong? Ethan's running a fever, and the school nurse just called. I'm in court all day, a case I absolutely can't step away from. James is in New York until tomorrow. I've tried my usual backup childcare options, but everyone's unavailable. Would you possibly be able to pick him up and watch him for a few hours? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. I'll go right now. Text me any medication information or instructions. Thank you, she said, relief evident in her voice. I'll let the school know you're coming. And Margaret, I really appreciate this. 20 minutes later, I was at Ethan's school, signing him out at the front office. He sat in the nurse's office, looking miserable, his normally energetic demeanor subdued by fever. Grandma, he said when he saw me, his voice small. I don't feel good. I know, sweetheart. Let's get you home and comfortable. I took him to my house, setting him up on the living room sofa with blankets, ginger ale, and his favorite stuffed triceratops from childhood. His fever wasn't dangerously high, but enough to make him feel terrible, headachy, achy, and generally miserable. Would you like me to read to you? I offered, after making sure he'd taken the children's fever reducer Allison had recommended. He nodded weakly, and I selected one of his favorite books from my growing collection, kept specifically for his visits. As I read, his eyelids grew heavy, and soon he was asleep, one hand still clutching his dinosaur. I texted Allison an update, then settled into the armchair nearby with some Wildwood paperwork, not wanting to leave Ethan alone even while he slept. There was something deeply familiar about the situation, caring for a sick child, the quiet worry, the tender vigilance. It brought back memories of James at the same age, feverish and vulnerable, wanting nothing but his mother's presence. Ethan slept for nearly 2 hours, waking disoriented and still feverish, but a little stronger. I helped him to the bathroom, then settled him back on the sofa with fresh ginger ale and some plain toast. "Can we watch a movie?" he asked hoarsely. "Of course. What would you like to see?" He selected a nature documentary about ocean ecosystems, and we watched together, Ethan occasionally asking questions or commenting on marine creatures that particularly interested him. Even ill, his curiosity remained intact. Around 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Allison, still in her court attire, looking concerned. "How is he?" she asked immediately. "The fever's coming down a bit. He's watching a documentary in the living room." She followed me inside, kneeling beside the sofa, to feel Ethan's forehead and check his color. "Hey, buddy, feeling any better?" "A little," he mumbled. "Grandma made me toast and read to me. And now we're learning about coral reefs." "That sounds nice." Allison smiled, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Thank you for taking such good care of him," she added, looking up at me. "I was happy to," I said honestly. It brought back memories of when James was little. After assessing that Ethan could safely be moved, Allison prepared to take him home. "I've canceled my meetings for tomorrow," she told me. "I'll keep him home from school and work from the house." "I could come help if you'd like," I offered. "So you can focus on your work while I keep an eye on him." She hesitated only briefly before nodding. "That would be wonderful, actually. I have some important client calls that would be difficult to reschedule. I'll come by around 9 then." As they were leaving, Ethan gave me a weak hug. "Thanks for taking care of me, Grandma." "Always, sweetheart. I'll see you tomorrow." After they left, I stood in my suddenly quiet house, feeling an unexpected contentment. For the first time since Ethan was born, I'd been called upon as the emergency backup, trusted with his care when he was vulnerable, included in the intimate circle of those responsible for his well-being. It was a profound shift from where we'd been just a few months earlier. The next morning, I arrived at James and Allison's house promptly at 9, armed with books, gentle activities, and ingredients for homemade chicken soup, my time-tested remedy for childhood illness. Allison answered the door looking relieved to see me. "Thank you for coming. He had a rough night. The fever spiked again around 2 a.m., but it's come down with medication." She led me inside, where Ethan was nestled on the family room sofa, surrounded by pillows and blankets, looking pale but a bit more alert than yesterday. "I've set up my office in the dining room," Allison explained. "I have client calls from 10 to 12, and then a video conference at 1:30, but I can be available between those times." "Don't worry about us," I assured her. "I have plenty of quiet activities planned, and I'll make sure he rests and stays hydrated." She nodded gratefully. "There's children's medication on the kitchen counter, and the doctor said we could alternate it with ibuprofen if the fever rises again." "I've got it all under control," I promised. "This isn't my first rodeo with childhood illness." A smile flickered across her face. "No, I suppose it isn't." The day passed peacefully. I read to Ethan, supervised a short educational television program when he felt up to it, and prepared chicken soup in their kitchen, the familiar rhythm of chopping, vegetables and simmering broth soothing in its normalcy. During her breaks, Allison would check on Ethan, her professional demeanor softening as she felt his forehead or adjusted his blankets. Around mid-afternoon, while Ethan napped and Allison was on her video conference, I tidied the kitchen and prepared a simple dinner that could be easily reheated later. There was something deeply satisfying about moving through these domestic tasks in service to my family, not as an outsider seeking permission to help, but as a natural extension of the family unit. When Allison finished her conference, she found me in the kitchen, putting the final touches on a casserole. "You didn't have to make dinner," she said, looking surprised. "I wanted to. It's one less thing for you to worry about, especially if Ethan has another rough night." I closed the oven door. "It just needs to be heated for 30 minutes at 350 degrees. "Thank you." She leaned against the counter, watching me work. "You know, I never imagined us here, you in my kitchen, helping take care of Ethan while I work. It feels Surprisingly right. It does, I agreed. Though I'm sorry it took Ethan being ill to bring us to this point. Better late than never. She picked up a dish towel, absently folding it. I've been thinking about what you said at Cape Cod, about wanting to be included, not to take over. I'm starting to understand what you meant. It's a fine line sometimes, I acknowledged, especially between mothers and daughters-in-law. So many unspoken expectations, so many opportunities for misunderstanding. My own mother wasn't very, present. In my childhood, Allison said quietly. She struggled with depression, was hospitalized several times. My father's mother helped raise me. She paused. She was wonderful, but she also constantly criticized my mother when she wasn't around. Made it clear she thought my father had married beneath him. This glimpse into Allison's background explained so much about her wariness with me. That must have been difficult for everyone. It was. I promised myself if I ever had children, I would protect them from that kind of toxic dynamic. She met my eyes directly. I think I projected those fears onto you, expected you to behave as my grandmother had. It wasn't fair. We're all shaped by our experiences, I said gently. And to be honest, I could have been more sensitive to how my offers of help might be perceived. Well, we seem to be finding a better way now. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. Even if it took an extreme real estate transaction to get us here. I laughed. Sometimes subtle approaches fail. Indeed, they do. That evening, after checking that Ethan was comfortable and his fever was under control, I prepared to leave. James had called to say his flight was delayed and he wouldn't be home until close to midnight. Thank you again for today, Allison said as she walked me to the door. For the childcare, the dinner, everything. I was happy to help. Call me if you need anything during the night or if you'd like me to come back tomorrow. I think we'll be okay. His fever seems to be staying down, and I've cleared my schedule for tomorrow. She hesitated, then added, but I appreciate knowing you're available. As I drove home, I reflected on the day's subtle shifts. Allison's revelation about her childhood explained so much about her protectiveness, her wariness of my involvement, and our quiet cooperation throughout the day had demonstrated what was possible when we set aside old assumptions and worked together. By the following week, Ethan was fully recovered and back in school. Our regular rhythms resumed. Wednesday, afternoons at my house, Sunday dinners twice a month, curriculum committee meetings where Allison and I continued our surprisingly effective collaboration. But something fundamental had changed. The emergency childcare situation had crossed an invisible boundary. I was no longer just the grandmother who visited on prescribed occasions. I had become part of their support system, someone trusted with Ethan's care in vulnerable moments. One October evening, I received an unexpected call from James. Mom, do you have plans this Saturday night? Nothing special. Why do you ask? Allison and I have been invited to a fundraising dinner for her law firm. We don't want to ask her parents. They're not great with bedtime routines, and the last time they watched Ethan, he was up until midnight. Would you consider staying with him? It would be from about 6 until 11 or so. Saturday night babysitting, the most coveted, most trusted childcare slot. I swallowed my surprise and kept my voice casual. I'd be happy to. It sounds like fun. Great. Ethan will be thrilled. He's been asking when you could have a sleepover. A sleepover? Well, it will be pretty late when we get home. We thought you might just want to stay in the guest room rather than drive home at midnight. But only if you're comfortable with that. I'd love to, I said, meaning it. That Saturday evening, I arrived at James and Allison's house with an overnight bag and plans for a special evening with Ethan. We made homemade pizza, played board games, and worked on a science experiment involving static electricity that left us both with hilariously wild hair. As I tucked him into bed later, Ethan asked sleepily, "Grandma, are you going to be here when I wake up tomorrow?" "I will be," I promised. "And I thought maybe we could make French toast for breakfast. Would you like that? With cinnamon and powdered sugar?" "Exactly that way." He smiled, his eyes already closing. "I like having you here, Grandma, in our house." "I like being here, sweetheart." After he fell asleep, I went downstairs to tidy up our evening's activities. There was something deeply satisfying about moving through their home, straightening, gathering, restoring order. Not as an outsider seeking to impose my ways, but as a welcome presence, trusted with their private spaces and routines. When James and Allison returned around 11:30, they found me reading in the living room, the house quiet and orderly. "How did it go?" Allison asked, slipping off her high heels with a sigh of relief. "Wonderfully. We had pizza, games, and a static electricity experiment that gave us both Einstein hair." I showed them the photo Ethan had insisted I take. "He went to bed without any fuss around 9. "That's better than we usually manage," James laughed. "What's your secret?" "No secret. Just the novelty of having Grandma as the babysitter." "Well, whatever it is, we appreciate it," Allison said. "Would you like some tea before turning in? We're too wired to sleep yet." I accepted, and the three of us settled in the kitchen with cups of herbal tea, talking about their evening, Ethan's activities, and my progress at Wildwood. The conversation flowed easily, without the careful navigation around sensitive topics that had characterized our interactions for so long. At one point, Allison said suddenly, "We received the formal proposal from the curriculum committee today. Your section on integrating hands-on learning across subject areas was particularly impressive." "Thank you. It's something I've always believed in strongly. Children learn best by doing, by engaging multiple senses and approaches." The principal mentioned she'd like to talk with you further about possibly expanding the recommendations into a district-wide initiative. I looked at her in surprise. "That would be wonderful." "You've made quite an impression," James said, looking proud. "They're even talking about using Wildwood as a regular field trip destination for science and environmental education. That's been one of my goals from the beginning, creating educational experiences that support classroom learning." I smiled, thinking of how far Wildwood had come from its purely impulsive purchase. It's become much more rewarding than I ever expected. "It's impressive, what you've accomplished there," Allison said, taking what could have been just, a dramatic gesture, and turning it into something with real value for the community. "Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most meaningful journeys," I observed. The next morning I woke early, enjoying the quiet of their home before anyone else was up. I padded down to the kitchen and began preparing for our promised French toast breakfast, finding everything I needed in their well-organized cabinets. Ethan appeared first, his hair tousled from sleep but his eyes bright with excitement. "You're still here." "I promised I would be," I smiled. "Ready to help with breakfast?" He climbed onto a stool at the counter, eager to assist with mixing the cinnamon egg batter and setting the table. James and Allison joined us soon after, drawn by the enticing aromas filling the kitchen. As we sat around the table, enjoying our breakfast together, I felt a sense of rightness, of belonging. This wasn't the stiff, formal Sunday dinners we'd shared in the past, but something more natural and genuine. A family sharing a meal, comfortable in each other's presence. After breakfast, while James and Ethan cleaned up, Allison asked if I'd like to see the garden. "I've been meaning to get your advice about some perennials," she explained. We walked through their backyard, discussing plant choices and garden design. It was a pleasantly ordinary conversation, the kind that happens between people who have moved beyond formality into genuine connection. As we circled back toward the house, Allison said, "James and I have been talking. We'd like to make this a regular thing, having you stay over occasionally, being part of our regular routines rather than just special occasions." I was momentarily speechless. "Ethan adores having you here," she continued. "And frankly, it's nice for us too. Having someone we trust with him. Someone who brings different energy and ideas into our home." She glanced at me. "If you're comfortable with it, of course." "I'd like that very much," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Good." She smiled, a genuine expression without reservation. "We're thinking of a pre-Christmas weekend shopping trip, just James and me, while you stay with Ethan. And then perhaps you could join us for our annual holiday cookie baking day the following weekend." The casual way she spoke of future plans, of my inclusion in family traditions, brought a lump to my throat. "That sounds wonderful." She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and we returned to the house where Ethan immediately bounded up to me. "Dad says you have to go home soon, but can we do this again? The sleepover and breakfast and everything?" I glanced at Allison, who nodded encouragingly. "Absolutely," I told him. "In fact, we were just talking about making it a regular thing." His face lit up. "Really? Like every weekend?" "Not quite that often," Allison laughed, "but regularly. And Grandma's going to stay with you when Dad and I go Christmas shopping next month." "Awesome." He turned to me, his expression serious. "Can we do more science experiments when you stay over? I want to learn about chemical reactions next." "I'm sure we can arrange that," I agreed, "as long as we don't set anything on fire." "I make no promises," James muttered, earning a playful swat from Allison. As I prepared to leave later that morning, gathering my overnight bag and the books I'd brought for Ethan, I felt a sense of completion, of things coming full circle. What had begun as a desperate attempt to force my way into my grandson's birthday party had evolved into something I'd never dared hope for. Genuine integration into their family life, not as an occasional visitor, but as a regular, welcomed presence. James walked me to my car, helping with my bag. "Thanks again for staying over, Mom. It meant a lot to Ethan, and to us." "It meant a lot to me, too," I said honestly. He hesitated, then added, "You know, I was really angry when you bought Wildwood. It seemed so extreme, so out of character for you." "It was," I acknowledged, "not my proudest moment. But I understand why you did it now, and I'm glad you did." He smiled ruefully. "Sometimes subtle approaches fail." I laughed, recognizing Allison's phrase from our earlier conversation. "Have you two been comparing notes?" "Maybe a little," he admitted. "We've had some good talks about family dynamics lately, about how to create something better than what either of us experienced growing up." "I'm glad to hear that." I touched his arm. "All I've ever wanted is for you to be happy, James. You, and now Ethan, and even Allison. That's what family means. Wanting the best for each other, even when we don't always agree on what that looks like." He nodded, then surprised me with a tight hug. "Love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart." As I drove home, I thought about the journey of the past few months, from exclusion to inclusion, from carefully managed visits to genuine integration into their lives. It hadn't been a smooth path. My purchase of Wildwood had been impulsive, perhaps even inappropriate by conventional standards. Yet that one audacious act had set in motion a chain of events I could never have predicted. It had forced my family to see me, to acknowledge my presence rather than manage my absence. It had created space for honest conversation, for the slow rebuilding of damaged relationships. And it had given me an unexpected second career, a purpose that extended beyond my family to touch countless others. Sometimes I reflected, the most transformative journeys begin with a single moment of courage, the decision to stand at the entrance rather than accept exclusion. To say, I matter, my presence matters, my love matters. And sometimes, the most powerful message we can send to those who would erase us is simply this: I refuse to be invisible. The following week, I was in my office at Wildwood, reviewing plans for our holiday programming when Diana knocked on the door. Ms. Collins? Sorry to interrupt, but you have visitors. I looked up, surprised to see Allison standing there with a tall, distinguished-looking woman I didn't recognize. Allison, this is unexpected. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, she assured me. I'd like to introduce Dr. Eleanor Chen, the district superintendent. She's very interested in the educational initiatives you've developed here at Wildwood. Dr. Chen stepped forward, extending her hand. Ms. Collins, I've heard remarkable things about your programs. The curriculum committee's recommendations were quite impressive, particularly the sections you contributed. Thank you, I said, rising to shake her hand. I'm just applying what I learned in 40 years of classroom teaching. Children learn best through engagement and discovery. Precisely, she nodded. I wonder if you might have time to show me around. I'm particularly interested in how you've integrated STEM learning into the adventure activities. I'd be delighted, I agreed, catching Allison's encouraging smile. As I led them through Wildwood, pointing out the educational components we'd developed, I felt a surge of pride in what we'd accomplished. The climbing wall now featured geological information about rock formations. The zip line course included physics principles. The nature trail had been enhanced with interactive stations about local ecosystems. This is exactly the kind of experiential learning we're trying to emphasize across the district, Dr. Chen commented as we concluded the tour. Would you be interested in developing a formal partnership with our schools? Perhaps serving as an educational consultant beyond just the field trips? I glanced at Allison, whose expression was encouraging rather than threatened. I'd be very interested, I told Dr. Chen. Education has always been my passion. Wonderful. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss possibilities. Dr. Chen handed me her card. Allison speaks very highly of your expertise. It's not often I get such a strong recommendation from one of our parent committee members. After Dr. Chen left, Allison lingered behind. I hope you don't mind that I brought her by unannounced. She was asking about potential educational consultants, and I immediately thought of you. Mind? I'm honored, I said sincerely. Thank you for the recommendation. She smiled. It seemed like the perfect intersection of your background and what you've created here. And selfishly, it means you'd be working with Ethan's school district, which he would love. As we walked toward the exit, Allison added, James and I were wondering if you'd like to join us for Thanksgiving this year. We usually host, and Ethan has been asking if you could help him make the pumpkin pies. I'd love that, I said, touched by the casual way she included me in their holiday plans. Pumpkin pie is my specialty. I know. James still talks about your pies from his childhood. She paused at the door. We're trying to create some new family traditions this year, ones that include everyone who matters in our lives. The words, everyone who matters, lingered in my mind long after she left. From being deliberately excluded from my grandson's birthday to being counted among everyone who matters, the journey had been unexpected, occasionally painful, but ultimately transformative. The holiday season brought another series of firsts. Thanksgiving at James and Allison's home was relaxed and joyful, with Ethan and I spending the morning preparing pies, while James managed the turkey and Allison created elaborate side dishes. The day unfolded without the tension that had characterized earlier family gatherings, each of us settling into comfortable roles that complemented rather than competed with each other. Early December brought the promised overnight stay while James and Allison went Christmas shopping. Ethan and I conducted chemistry experiments in the kitchen with appropriate safety measures, baked cookies, and stayed up late watching a documentary about volcanoes. The next morning, James and Allison returned loaded with packages and stories of their shopping adventures. We have something for you too, Mom, James said, handing me a small wrapped box, an early Christmas gift. Inside was a key. A copy of the key to their house. We thought you should have your own, Allison explained, for babysitting, emergencies, or just dropping by. The symbolic weight of that key far exceeded its small size. It represented trust, inclusion, and permanent connection. Everything I'd sought when I made that impulsive decision to buy Wildwood. "Thank you," I said simply, knowing they understood what it meant to me. Christmas itself brought another invitation, to join them Christmas morning to watch Ethan open presents, followed by a leisurely brunch. As I sat on their sofa, coffee in hand, watching Ethan's excitement over each gift, I caught James watching me, a contented smile on his face. "Happy?" he asked quietly, sitting beside me while Ethan examined a new microscope. "Very," I assured him. "This is more than I dared hope for, after everything." "It's where we should have been all along," he said. "It just took us a while to figure it out." "Some lessons come harder than others," I acknowledged. After the holidays, my work with the school district began in earnest. Dr. Chen had appointed me to lead a special initiative on experiential learning, developing curriculum that could be implemented across all grade levels. The role was part-time, but engaging, using my educational background in ways I hadn't expected at this stage of life. Wildwood continued to flourish, expanding its educational programs and community partnerships. I hired additional staff to manage day-to-day operations, allowing me to focus on program development and long-term planning. What had begun as an impulsive purchase had evolved into a thriving business with a meaningful impact on the community. And my place in my family's life solidified and deepened. The regular overnight stays with Ethan became a cherished routine. Sunday dinners expanded to include occasional neighbors or friends, the formality of earlier gatherings replaced by genuine warmth and connection. I even accompanied them on their spring break trip to Florida, sharing a rental house and creating memories that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. One evening in April, almost exactly a year after the birthday party that had changed everything, I was at James and Allison's house for dinner. Ethan was excitedly sharing news about his science fair project, a sophisticated study of tidal pool ecosystems that we had been working on together for weeks. "Ms. Rodriguez says it might win first prize," he told us proudly, "especially with the interactive model Grandma helped me build." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Allison praised. "All your hard work is paying off." After dinner, while James helped Ethan with homework, Allison asked if I'd help her with something in the garden. We stepped outside into the mild spring evening, the garden coming alive with early blooms and fresh growth. "What did you need help with?" I asked. "Nothing specific," she admitted. "I just wanted a moment to talk privately." She gestured to a garden bench, and we sat down together. "Is everything all right?" I asked, concerned by her serious expression. "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually." She smoothed her skirt, a gesture I'd come to recognize as her gathering thoughts. "I've been reflecting on how much has changed in the past year, how our family has grown stronger by including you more fully." "I've noticed that too," I said carefully. "When you bought Wildwood, I was furious," she continued. "It seemed like the ultimate power play, using money to override our decision as parents." "It wasn't my proudest moment," I acknowledged. "But looking back now, I can see it differently. You weren't trying to take control, you were refusing to be erased." She met my eyes directly, "And I'm grateful that you did." "You are?" she nodded. "If you hadn't taken such a dramatic stand, we might have continued in the same pattern indefinitely. Ethan would have missed out on his relationship with you. James would have remained caught in the middle. And I would have continued thinking of you as a threat rather than as family." "It's been a remarkable transformation," I agreed. "For all of us." "Next month is Ethan's birthday again," she said. "We're planning a party at Wildwood, of course. But this time, I'd like you to help plan it, not as the owner, but as his grandmother, as part of our family." The invitation to help plan, to be included from the beginning rather than forcing my way in, touched me deeply. I'd be honored. As we sat in the gathering dusk, watching the spring breeze ruffle new leaves, I felt profound gratitude for the journey we'd traveled. The path hadn't been straight or easy. It had required courage, persistence, and ultimately forgiveness on all sides. But the destination, this moment of genuine belonging, of being valued for exactly who I was, made every difficult step worthwhile. Sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with a single moment of courage, the decision to stand at the entrance rather than accept exclusion. To say, I matter, my presence matters, my love matters. And sometimes the most powerful message we can send to those who would erase us is simply this: I refuse to be invisible. Ethan's 9th birthday party was everything his 8th had not been, at least for me. The venue was the same, of course, but this time I wasn't waiting anxiously at the entrance, hoping for acknowledgement. Instead, I was fully integrated into the celebration, having helped plan activities, select decorations, and coordinate the educational dinosaur presentation that was the centerpiece of the event. As children and parents filled Wildwood's main pavilion, I moved easily among them, no longer an outsider forcing my way in, but a recognized part of the hosting family. James manned the rock-climbing wall, helping children safely ascend while explaining geological formations. Allison organized the food and gift table, occasionally catching my eye across the room with a smile of shared understanding. And Ethan bounced between activities, proudly introducing me to his friends. "This is my grandma," he would say. "She owns this place, and she knows everything about dinosaurs." At one point, as I helped a group of children excavate fossils from a sandbox, I looked up to see Allison watching me, a thoughtful expression on her face. When our eyes met, she crossed the room to join me. "Having fun?" she asked. "Immensely," I assured her. "I was just thinking about last year's party, how different everything was then." Indeed, I brushed sand from my hands. Though I must say my entrance was more dramatic last time. She laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "True. Less sneaking in the side door, more making a statement." "Sometimes subtle approaches fail," I said, an observation that had become something of a private joke between us. "Indeed they do," she agreed. Then, more seriously, "Thank you for forcing us to see you, for refusing to be erased. Our family is stronger for it." As she walked away to check on the cake preparations, I watched Ethan demonstrating a paleontology tool to his friends, his face alight with enthusiasm and confidence. In him, I could see echoes of James at the same age, but also glimpses of the unique person he was becoming. Curious, kind, and secure in the knowledge that he was surrounded by people who loved him. Family doesn't always come easily. Sometimes it requires bold actions, uncomfortable conversations, and the courage to stand at the entrance and demand to be seen. But in the end, those efforts yield the most precious reward of all: the knowledge that you matter, that your presence matters, that your love matters, and that truly is worth buying an entire adventure park for. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.